Hello, I'm Jason Solomons and welcome, bienvenue, to my Seen Any Good Films Lately Cannes Special Podcast 2022. I'm here on the Côte d'Azur, in and out of the Palais, up and down the Croisette, with some major Cannes stars and films causing a buzz.
I'm not the kind of director who makes film in order to please the audience. I'm just trying to make my films as sincerely, as entirely as possible.
I think that if you don't have courage as an actor, you cannot go through it.
I've got top Cannes talents on this first show from the festival, and I'll bring you a few more over the course of the rest of it. But things kicked off here on Tuesday, May the 17th, with a French zombie comedy called Coupé, or Final Cut, from director Michel Hazanavicius and starring his wife, Bérénice Bejo. They're the team behind the Oscar winner, The Artist, of course. It also starred Romain Duris, and it's a film farce about what a farce filmmaking can be. And it starts by showing us a rather chaotic half hour of a one-take zombie movie, a movie you're not quite sure you can really watch all of, to be honest. And then it rewinds to tell the story of how that movie was conceived and then just about shot. It's pretty funny when you realise why it was so bad for the first 30 minutes, though that does require you to sit through those first 30 minutes and wait for the rewards, which are fairly mixed, including a running diarrhea gag I could have done without. But hey, they made the film, and that's what it's all about round these parts, and, as we're about to find out, it's bloody hard work. Yeah, Juliette Binoche is one of the queens of Cannes. She's a rare holder of all three major awards at Cannes, Venice and Berlin, as well as an Oscar for The English Patient. She was at Cannes last year with a film called Between Two Worlds, which is coming out now in the UK. And in it we watch her scrubbing floors and cleaning windows, emptying bins and changing beds on a ferry boat as a cleaner through the night. Although really she's an undercover journalist in a northern French industrial port town. The original title of the movie in French is Robsahm, which is the place in northern France. And it's a character that Binoche is playing who's based on the real-life Florence Aubenas, who investigated, for a book, how precarious life was becoming for Europe's low-paid gig economy workers. So that's what the film's about. But surrounded by real-life non-professional actors in this social realist setting, directed by Emmanuel Carrère, Binoche just glows, brighter than them. I mean, she just does. For all her immersive acting abilities, you just know it's Juliette Binoche. So I wonder, when I met her on Zoom, she was in Paris in a 5-star hotel when I was talking to her down the Zoom, I wondered, Miss Binoche, if you've ever actually had a dirty job in your life.
When you have to deal with an actor or a director that is very difficult, perverse, it happens sometimes, and that's the worst. Because you've got to open up, you've got to go through it, because you're opening your soul, you're opening your being. So when you get shit, it's hard.
I also asked La Binoche what conditions she's worked under that make her feel like it's so tough being an actress.
As actors, I'm sorry, but we go into the coldest weathers, the hottest weather. We have to learn lines and lines, going to the worst emotions as the highest emotions. I mean, we go into places like we have to be sponges to give everything we have. I mean, it's not a safe place to be. It's a courageous place to be. And so, we should, in any places, it could be in the street, it could be any places. I think that if you don't have courage as an actor, you cannot go through it.
Prolific as ever, she's been mixing blockbusters with domestic and international indie titles. And I'm wondering if she's feeling the change of pace of filmmaking these days.
I love both. Doing it quickly, it brings something out of you that you're not as conscious. Mm-hmm. But you have the instinct, the intuition that it's where you need to go. At the same time, it's a lot of pressure on you. It's exhausting because, especially, I'm thinking of the film I just did in Mississippi, in U.S. Mississippi, where I was playing a truck driver, And it was such a condensed film. Also, we were shooting at night, then we shot again at day, and then again at night. I mean, it went back and forth like 5 times. And when you're shooting almost every day, it's really something. And also the pressure that it with the heat, with the mosquitoes, with the lack of money, you feel that you're always on the edge, that an accident is going to happen, that something is really wobbling, but yet you're doing it, and it gives you strength, and it gives a certain power.
I'd heard that she was responsible for the non-professional actors under the direction of Emmanuel Carrère, but that Binoche herself kind of took charge. Is that right?
I remember there was a moment in a scene. We were on the boat. There was a lot of wind. It was very cold. We were in the middle of the night. And with Hélène, who was playing Christelle, there was that scene that was very important for the film. I could feel that it was hard for her, because she as actors, we tend to put our feelings on the side or use them in order to really go for what we need to do for the film. And I could feel that her resistance when she felt she had enough, she was too cold, or she didn't want to go back to it because it's too painful, because of the emotional stage being so demanding, that she didn't have a big resistant field. And that's where I was worried about, that she could say, I quit, I don't want to do it anymore. So I was trying to make sure that we go back to get warm, to go back to it and get the emotion, to push her into places where she could react with.
Between Two Worlds is very moving, but it's also very political, of course. I wonder how you feel about taking a role that is very divorced from your own starry reality in order to make a point.
I felt like I'm observing, and I'm trying to get the sense of it so that I have some kind of consciousness when I'm in front of the camera, and I have to recreate life into a form that's going to tell the truth of what I felt. It is not the same. It is not the same reality, because I'm not living that life. But the truth of the feeling is real, is the closest I can go to those people in order for the audience to connect. So we're there as actors to help making recognition and linking consciousness, linking inside of us between what we feel, our thoughts, our bodies, and I think movies have that power of changing people. It can happen.
With so much going on in the world of cinema, she seems such a movie star to me, and yet she's even doing HBO stuff on the telly with Colin Firth in The Staircase. I'm wondering what more movies hold for you, Juliette Binoche, and what the future of cinema can still be.
My big ambition in pushing and making this film is for people have the potential, the possibility of rehumanizing our society, our habits. And it doesn't take a lot. And I think it would make a huge difference with a word, with a look, with a smile, with a thank you, with a thank you here, because we need that service. And it's just to slow down in the consciousness, not being taken away with your own, rhythm of selfish rhythm of saying that, you can't stop your life because it's like you're on a train. You can slow down a little bit. Just a few seconds would make a difference.
That's Juliette Binoche. Between Two Worlds is out in the UK next week, and Binoche herself is being much buzzed here in Cannes on a project in which she's reuniting with Ralph Fiennes, her English patient co-star, on a film called The Return, a modern-day reworking of The Odyssey, says here, to be directed by Uberto Pasolini, the man who produced the full Monty. So Binoche is still very much at the forefront of Cannes. Now, one of my favourite directors in all of Europe has to be Mia Hansen Love, whose work I fell in love with. There's no other description for it, really, when she had me in tears here watching The Father of My Children in 2009 in the Un Certain Regard section. Since then, she's had films in Berlin such as Goodbye First Love, capturing the dizzy feelings of everyday life, while her autobiographical Paris-set film Eden, about the 90s French touch music scene and DJs, is one of the great soundtracks and movies about the clubbing scene. She was here at Cannes last July with Bergman Island, about a filmmaking couple played by Vicky Krieps and Tim Roth who retreat to the Baltic island of Faroe, where Bergman used to work and shoot and live, and made films like Scenes of a Marriage and Persona, and which has become a tourist destination for cinephiles. Bergman Island's pretty self-referential, so I did start by asking Mia Hansen Love if she felt that the troubles of two filmmakers sequestered on a filmmaker's island might be a little bit niche, a bit in a bubble, and why anyone might care about that.
I'm never sure that people will give a shit, but I'm not the kind of directors who makes film in order to please the audience. I'm just trying to make my films as sincerely, as entirely as possible, and with the hope that at the end I will go deep enough inside myself or my experiences of life to reach some kind of universality. But of course, you never know, you're never sure about this. But I don't think the best way to reach universality is to aim for universality. I mean, I think you have to be yourself, and you have to go deep into yourself. That's the only way I know how to write films, and then just hope that as many people as possible will find something that talks to them. But to me, it's about any relationship too. I mean, it's about what it is to live with somebody else, to have the same job or the same vocation, and try to find the right balance between the kind of complicity that you can have with somebody whose life you've been sharing for many years, and at the same time you need to have your own space, your own private garden, and how can you find the right balance between both? And it's kind of impossible, and I think all people who have experienced relationships know about this in one way or another.
Yes, that's the perfect answer. I said it to get that answer, which is perfect. I was fascinated. I am fascinated to know how people work, because I have a wife too, and we don't do the same job, but we work we've all just now been living in exactly the same house for 2 years, while our partner do the same job. And sometimes you think, I didn't know that's how she was at work. I didn't know that how she is necessarily. So I think we learn a lot about each other in this time. And your film, when I saw it last Cannes in last July, it was just almost the end of lockdown. It was a little break in between the lockdown. Yeah. And it felt like a film that was you found the universality even more, because it was referring to people who were kind of cloistered together off on an island.
It's true that there is something weird when I look back at the film now, is I realize that when I wrote it, of course, long before lockdown, it was telling about a life that very few people have, like where you just stay, in one place we live in a solitary way, isolated, and you just like enjoy the nature and the writing and don't see much people. And actually it became like everybody's life more or less for the next 2 years or something. I mean, in different ways, and not of course not everybody could enjoy staying in this kind of places during lockdown. Not me neither, actually, and I regret it for her a lot after experiencing all the COVID time. But it's true that our perspective on that kind of way of living must probably have changed since, because of lockdown.
Did you get close to feeling how Bergman felt while he was writing? What's the spirit of Bergman that you get from being in that spot, and how did that affect your movie?
I've never felt so close to believing in ghosts than while I was staying there. I don't want to sound pretentious when I say that, because it has nothing to do with that, but you feel anybody who goes there, I think, feels close to him in one way or another, because you feel his presence everywhere. I mean, the houses, and not only the houses, but the whole place seems haunted, unless if you don't care at all, I guess, about him and his work, maybe, and then there are a few tourists who come there and they don't give a shit about Bergman,
Well, it's a nice
but
beach,
for
whatever
anybody,
happens.
sorry?
It's a nice beach, whatever you go for.
Yeah, of course, but those people don't feel Bergman's presence on the beach, obviously. But for anybody who goes there with some interest for his work and who he was in mind, it's an incredibly intense experience. But what struck me and what made me, I guess, enjoy the different stays that I had there so much, was the fact that it was never a burden. It was never a source of anxiety, and it could have. I mean, I think I felt more anxious about Bergman's films. Like I can feel anxiety about Bergman's whole existence in general when I'm in Paris, if I watch any of his films, like in general, but it never happened to me when I was there. For some reasons, while I was on Foreux, is like the moments where I could be scared, like, because you can always be scared of ghosts, but I never feel inhibited by Bergman's genius. I felt his genius, but I also felt his loneliness. And to me, I felt his integrity and his choice of living there in such a remote place, and just like his freedom, the fact that he was able during his whole career, throughout his whole life as a director, to preserve that solitude, that independence in terms of an artist. There are so few directors manage to do that. I mean, he wrote all of his films, and he did that until the very end of his life, and he just made films about the one things that he wanted to care about, and he didn't give a shit of what other people thought about them.
Do you admire this, Mia, or do you think it's
I
impractical?
do.
You want to do this yourself, though?
But of course I admire this. Is my God. I mean, come on.
But you want to do it yourself? When you meet your hero, you want to be like your hero. You can't go and live on an island forever.
Of course I want to.
You can't. You've got to come to Cannes.
Of course I would like to be like him, but I can't. I can't, just because I have another kind of life and I have kids, and I can't live like him. And himself, when he decided to actually live there, he was already an old man, and before that he had a life in Stockholm, and he was traveling. It's not like he lived like this during his whole life, but there is this integrity about him, and the fact that he never made any compromises, artistically speaking, that makes him, to me, one of the directors, for among other reasons, also because of the films themselves, of course, and the themes of the film that speak to me in many ways. But I mean, the way he practiced, the way he was a director, and this strength about him, this moral, artistic strength, I admire more than anything, of course.
Although I think your films are very different to his. I mean, they have a moral and intellectual rectitude and rigor, of course, but you have a lightness of touch that he doesn't have.
They are totally different, and I never try to imitate him, and it would be ridiculous. I mean, I have another story, another life. I'm a woman living in 2022. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to try to imitate his work in any way. But I think you can be a huge admirer of a director, of an artist, and have just few in common in terms of what your own work is about. But I still hope, even though in my very modest way, I try to at least preserve integrity as well in my way of working, and I don't pretend I have the same kind of strength and creative power than he had, of course, but I at least I have this awareness of the importance of being uncompromised in my way of being a director.
How different is Un Beau Matin, One Fine Morning, that you have in Cannes this year in the next few days. How different was that? Was there a sort of element of sort of clearing away the Bergman stuff with this, or are the two related in some way, do you think?
I think all my films are very related,
Yeah.
and they are all related to all the others in some way. So I could mention like I could make bridge. How do you say, like
Yeah.
between Un Beau Matin and almost all of my films, and which are all, I think, equally personal, but in different ways. But it's pretty much the opposite in a way, because Bergman Island had to do with my desire to escape my own, private territory in a way. Even though the films can seem kind of autobiographical, it's just a reinvention of an autobiography, but it's not literally autobiographic. I'm still, imagining things that never happened, and my desire to do Bergman Island had to do with the need to escape France and Paris and my own life in some ways, and reinvent myself in another territory, and also to spend time in in the country that also had to do with that, I think, in some ways. Whereas One Fine Morning, Un Beau Matin is pretty much the opposite, because here I feel like I needed to face reality as it was for me during the last years, and so I would say that Bergman Island was dealing with my dreams in a way, whereas One Fine Morning is dealing much more frontally with the reality of mine.
A very tough reality, a very beautiful reality in some say, but a very tough, very sort of everything happens to Lea Seydoux's character. She has to deal with her parents, she has to deal with her love life, everything is coming in at once to this woman. She has to deal with quite a lot. There was 2 films here in Cannes last year, Tout s'est bien passé of François Ozon, Everything Went Fine, and The Vortex of Gaspard Noé, which dealt with dementia. And then I see it again in your film, and assisted suicide.
Sorry.
No, it's clearly one of the issues of our time. I don't think I've ever seen it dealt with quite so much by our generation of filmmakers. I mean, François is a bit older than you, perhaps, and Gaspard, but it seems to be something that we are dealing with. And we have The Father that Florian Zeller made with Anthony Hopkins. I don't know. It's a new thing for me in cinema.
Maybe it is. Well, maybe because it's not so sexy, and cinema didn't want to deal with. I mean, maybe before our times, the cinema would rather deal with more glamorous issues, and that's not, of course, a very glamorous one. And maybe we dare facing this kind of issues more now in films. Like we're not afraid of speaking of anything anymore, which is a good thing, I guess. But it's also true that more and more people face that, I guess, because populations are getting older, maybe, and it's just I realized after writing a film that was dealing with this, and talking about this, I realized, like, around me, everybody, not everybody had been through this, fortunately, but a lot of people in one way or another have to get confronted with the the issues of the nursing hospital. I don't know how you say that in English. And how painful it is to have to get your parents, in these kind of places, and to see parents getting sick and living in these places that are somewhere between life and death. I mean, places that nobody really can want their parents to go to. And I realized that around me, almost everybody at one point, maybe not their parents, maybe their grandparents, but it's really become part of our modern lives, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah, in fact, my favorite scene, I mean, there are many favorite scenes in Un Beau Matin, but the bit where Lea Seydoux is trying to do her job, trying to interpret, and she breaks down because there's just so much going on in her head to do with her father and to do with her new lover, and the second she just she mucks up the translation. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where the drama happened for me. She's like, fuck this, I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah,
People
where
talking.
everything seems so easy for her until now when she translates, and at some point she loses track.
Yeah. What was the first film you ever saw at the cinema, Mia?
I don't know, but I have strongest memories of my first watching videotapes, at my grandmother's or at my parents'. That my strongest memories actually of films have to do with that, I think.
What was the one that you played over and over and over again?
I think the Hitchcock films, I don't know exactly which one, but there were like a couple of Hitchcock videotapes at my grandmother's place, and she had only a few films at home, so I would watch them again and again. And I think they have actually influenced me even more deeply than I thought. The other day I watched one of the Hitchcock films that I had never seen again since childhood. And how is it called in English? The one with Qui sera, sera.
The Man Who Knew Too Much.
The Man Who Knew Too Much.
The second one, yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary. And you know, that song Qui sera, sera, I actually used in my second feature, Father of My Children, the Doris Lessing song. But when I wrote it and used Father of My Children and used the song, I had not watched the film again, and it was extremely disturbing in some ways to see it again and confront my memory of the film with the reality of it. And I realized that how much it had been part of me somehow, this whole scene with the song where the mother finds her son again through that song. I mean, it's such a extraordinary moment.
Doris Day in the sort of red, pink dress. It is a sort of she's at the piano. Yeah. L'homme qui en savait trop, c'est ça en français?
L'homme qui en savait trop, exactement.
Yeah. I love how we change the names. The title. Have you ever fallen in love at the cinema?
I always go back to this. I feel a little bit obsessive about it, but I think maybe as a teenager, watching Michael Mann's Heat made me fall in love both at the time with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
At the same time.
Yeah, both of them. And I think I enjoyed that experience a lot. And I remember crying a lot also. And strangely enough, I remember identifying myself to this film at this time.
Well, it's a brilliant film.
Yeah.
So you can have
so
that.
melancholic.
What's your favorite musical moment in a film?
Oh la la, it's a difficult question you're asking to me. I'm not even sure. The thing that comes to me right now, without, I don't analyze, I just respond spontaneously, and I don't even know what is the music. But I think there is something I find extraordinary about music in Bresson's film. Was it Le Diable probablement? The Devil probably.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this, I think it's in that film, there is this scene, this moment where the character who has planned to commit suicide and is about to do it, and he walks in the street and he just stops. He walks in the street and he just, from the window of an apartment that we don't see inside, there is a music coming out. Somebody's listening to music. And I don't remember if it was Schubert or who it was. But it just, for a moment, it just slows down and listens a bit to the music. And then he continues his walk. And I would need to analyze it to tell you better about it. But for some reason, here it says something about what music is in our lives and the way it connects us to the sublime.
Yeah.
I think it says it in the most simple and powerful way.
And Mia Hansen Love's playful, smart, pretentiously perfect Bergman Island is out in UK cinemas on June the 3rd. Okay. What else have I seen here at Cannes these first few days? I liked Armageddon Time, an 80s set family drama in Queens, directed by James Gray. and starring an excellent Anne Hathaway as the mum and Jeremy Strong as the sort of working class, lower middle class family. And it's a story about their kid who befriends a black boy at school, which sort of upsets them and makes them think they should sort of send him to private school if they can afford it. And it also stars Anthony Hopkins as the grandpa, which was a bit odd, because Anthony Hopkins speaking a bit of Yiddish doesn't quite sound right, and he doesn't sound very New York Jewish at all. Bit of an odd casting, that, really. I like the film still, but I didn't think Anthony Hopkins was the right casting for that at all, even though I love Anthony Hopkins, as you know, very much. Brilliant in The Father. Not so good here, like a hammy, kosher person. Anyway, there was an extraordinary film called E.O., which is a Polish donkey movie, henceforth referred to only as such. It's bonkers donkey movie. A little donkey gets shoved around and goes from a circus and then sort of gets sold into cattle and becomes like a beast of burden, and then watches a football match and then gets sold for salami meat. Anyway, it's totally unusual. I suppose there's a comparison to Andrea Arnold's film Cow, but this is much more beautiful in its way, always strange, some hallucinogenic scenes, some kind of changing of the frame, really kind of punkish, avant-garde style cinema by Polish director Jerzy Skolimowski, haunting images and some great music as well. It's called E.O. And back in the UK, you've got the a-ha movie coming out. a-ha, the movie. It's a documentary by Thomas Robsahm about the Norwegian Take On Me band. So I spoke to Thomas about it a while back. You might remember you heard the show when he was promoting The Worst Person in the World, a wonderful comedy that took Cannes by storm last year with Renata Rainsby in the lead. And he co-produced that film, but he's directed a-ha, the movie. So I spoke to him about that, and let's catch up with him and find out more about making a film about Norway's biggest band, most famous people, a-ha, the effect that making Take On Me had on those handsome young chaps.
I would say because of the music. I think that, you can have a great video and you can have great looks, but in the end, when the years pass, the music has to be strong and has to be something that doesn't get old and feels dated or whatever. And I think the band is quite underestimated as musicians and as great songwriters, because Take On Me is of course a signature song that everybody knows, but they have so many other great songs, and I'm not sure why. It might be because they were from Norway, or it might be because they were too good looking, maybe because the name is a bit too obvious. I don't know. Something made it really difficult for them to be kind of a credible band.
Yeah.
And they tried to go rock. They tried to go more depressive. They got back after a split and became more of a grown-up band for music for grown-ups, which worked okay. But they've never, when they talk about the great music of the 80s, a-ha are never mentioned, and I think that's unfair. I think that.
But they are now. I mean,
yeah, but not in the same way.
My kids still sing. I was playing it at home. They like, and my kids are like, how do you know this? Because it's sampled many times and.
That song definitely. I hope the film can make people realize that there's much more to a-ha than only that song. So many other great songs.
Although, as a producer and director, you make a decision. You spend quite a lot of time on Take On Me. It is one of the great pop songs. You say it's one of the biggest hits of all time.
Yeah, and again, the Martians. When they come, you can't say everybody has heard Take On Me, so we don't go into that. You have to go into that because that was the thing that made everything happen. And
the Martians will probably be humming. They know it's floating around in space on Voyager.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there you go. There's loads to enjoy at the movies, either here at the Epicentre in Cannes or back home, where you might also fancy Scottish Weepy, the road dance, set on the Isle of Lewis, all very melodramatic and stormy and old-fashioned in a Sunday matinee sort of way. It's all right, actually, with Mark Gatiss. I will be reporting again next week and giving you more guests and more reviews, and maybe I'll get some reaction from other critics here on the Croisette, and I'll let you know how I've got on at my first Cannes as a producer. It's going all right. but it's very difficult to do the two gigs, I'm learning. You know, you've either got to be the journalist and the critic, or you've got to go around being a producer and drumming up interest in your movies and sort of making connections. And the two are quite different worlds. So whilst it's my 25th Cannes as a reporter and critic, it's also my first Cannes in many ways. And I feel a bit anew. I've had sort of a strange existential moments, shedding of the skin of the old and trying to fit into the new. By the time I speak to you next week, I shall be fully immersed in my new role, but not enough to forget about you and not give you another sinningly good films lately from Cannes. Until then, au revoir et merci.